and welcome to this bonus news element of the Undercut podcast. There was so much going on, weirdly, after Mexico that we didn't want to try and cram it all into your ear holes all at once. So we've cut out some of it and given you the non-race news bits in this extra little element. As always, I'm joined by my ever-able co-hosts, Thiemo Albus-Daly and Ellie-May Taylor. How are you both this evening?
A little offended that you couldn't find something nicer to say about us, but apart from that, perfectly good, thank you.
I said you were ever able. There's nothing wrong with saying you were ever capable of doing your job.
There's nicer ways to say it.
Ellie-May, have I offended you?
If I'm honest, I wasn't paying attention.
Exactly. See, she's perfectly fine with it. We'll roll on to the news. Thiemo, you're opening this one up with some FIA Series stuff.
Dino Beganovich, which I had down as proper pronunciation earlier, so I apologise to Dino for this. He's joining Prema in Formula 3 for 2023. He's the FIA champion with Prema in 2022. Very decent F3 team with some good drivers coming up throughout the years, so it'll be very interesting to see how he does. He had 3 non-point finishes this year, but overall pretty decent, but a little bit Arthur Leclerc in kind of bad quality sometimes and not always reflected. But I also think that he could be the driver to, if Arthur doesn't step up to F2 next year, he could be potentially the deal breaker for Arthur there if he comes in and beats him immediately. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially in the topsy-turvy world of Formula 3 and the craziness that comes with it. And also a good plug for everyone listening to keep an eye out for our F3 end-of-season triple-header review that is going to come out between this episode and our Brazil Grand Prix preview episode.
Yes, it is. Moving on from some F3-ish news to Lewis Hamilton, and he's launched his film and TV company, Dawn Apollo Films, which he set up in collaboration with the Copper Talent Agency, which is run by his manager, Penny Thoe even. The new company already has 2 projects on the slate, an untitled feature film starring Brad Pitt, certified wife beater, and a feature documentary on Hamilton's own journey to Formula One. Hamilton sort of basically said, when I do stop racing, which I don't plan on doing for a while, interesting, he dropped it in a media interview about this, I still feel I'm in a good place and I want it to be seamless. I want to be able to move on to focus fully on Dawn Apollo Films and sort of jump in at a similar level to what he's been used to. Essentially, he's building some pillars to keep him supported when he retires from racing. He also, in August, he bought a minority share in the Denver Broncos, which I feel was at one point a running joke in The Simpsons, where Homer wanted the Denver Broncos. But
it's very possible with them. But he's been to a couple of games now and they seem to be doing all right. So I know nothing about this sport aside from what happens in the Super Bowl, and even then I figured immediately afterwards. So
I know so little about American football, but yeah, it's interesting to see Hamilton sort of continuing his sort of branching out of things outside the sport. And again, he's aware of his pending retirement, but he's also saying that it's not coming just yet. So with regards to him staying around in Formula One, it's good news in that instance.
Was it the Denver Broncos that were on yesterday at Wembley against the Jacksonville Jaguars?
I fear you're asking the wrong people, Ellie-May.
Maybe. The person who would know would be Megan Maurer, but she's not on the podcast this week. I suppose one of us could Google it, or we could just sort of not know and move on. We'll not know and move on.
Ellie-May, I'm going to throw it to you here because Max and Sky Sports are in a bit of a tiff. Tell us everything.
All of Red Bull have decided to snub Sky Sports UK and apparently Sky Sports Italia because they are next to Sky Sports in the media pen. Essentially, Ted Kravitz said that Max basically shouldn't have won the championship last year, and Red Bull have taken that personally.
It does feel a bit of a schoolyard tiff, doesn't it?
I mean, it's almost like they've taken the school of Fernando Alonso in pettiness, and I kind of respect it.
I'm not surprised that you respect that, to be honest,
but I did hear that Sky Italy were like, hang on, guys, like, we haven't said it. Please, like, don't snub us just because we're next to them. But don't they share the same? They share the same TV camera or something, because we sometimes get the Sky Italy reporters, don't we?
Occasionally, yes.
So maybe
quite
that's
possibly.
why. So
But
maybe
still,
that's
it
why
seems a little unfair to blame the Italians for this. They've got enough problems as is. They don't need to be blamed for something extra.
Yeah, they've just sort of been caught up in a tiff that they were never really involved in the first place. But I mean, it was a bit of, I don't think Ted should have said it, personally.
It is one of those things, though. I feel like, okay, fine, you've got your opinion, but surely both of you should just be then, again, I'm not trying to start any beef with anything else. I'm just saying, surely you would just be annoyed with the stewards and the race directors from Abu Dhabi instead of blaming each other. Like, if you want to go and blame someone. So,
yeah, it wasn't
I
really...
don't think Ted is blaming Max. I don't think it didn't come across that way. It was just because I think none of us are not under the impression that either one of those two, considering the performances they put in last year, deserved to win it. It was just the way in which it was done. And I think that maybe, okay, like you say, Ted maybe shouldn't have said it, or if he did, should have said it in a slightly different way, because then we wouldn't need to be having this nonsense to cover for.
Yeah, I guess you always get told, if you want to join the media side of any sort of motorsport, whether it's right or wrong, have an opinion, but don't have such a strong opinion that you're going to annoy the people within it. And I feel like that probably still applies when you're in it.
I do wonder how much of this is coming off the back of the cost cap as well, just because there was a lot of, for want of a better word, slander towards Red Bull there, and Christian didn't seem to be standing for a lot of that, and now it's another thing. It's like, it just seems again of like, oh, everyone's calling us names and we're going to have a bit of a boo-boo about it. And when I feel like the better thing would just to be surely just, again, you're Red Bull, you're Max Verstappen, you're Christian Horner, and nothing against Ted Kravitz, but he's not on the same level of stardom as they are, and he's not got the same high profile. He's a consistent staple in Sky Sports and F1, arguably because he's been there for donkey's years. But you should be used to people, both in the paddock and outside of it, saying silly things occasionally, to just be like, oh yeah. Because again, it just reminds me of Cyril and Christian in previous years jousting with each other on barbs. And like, oh, that's perfectly fine, but one reporter says one thing and you suddenly get all offended. It just seems a bit making a load of stuff out of nothing when it would just be easier to ignore it and move on. Yeah.
I guess where I see, where I understand with Red Bull where they're coming from, is that the media have a very big role in how things are portrayed in Formula One, because that's the only access for millions of people. And they don't just, am I right in saying they don't just cover the UK? Do they cover?
Yeah, they cover Australia, America, a few other places.
Basically, if you get English-speaking TV, you're getting the Sky Sports coverage, I think, is the way it runs. Yeah,
so think of the storyline they're portraying to whole countries. With Red Bull, then you would be annoyed.
The one thing I would just counter that with, just for the sake of is that surely Red Bull should credit the F1 fans for not just believing something that Sky says and not doing their own homework on it, especially these days where you're encouraged to get multiple sources for something and to make up your own mind on that and not just accept what is spoon-fed to you. Especially as it came during, one of Ted's notebooks for Austin anyway. So it's after all of the main coverage anyway, and you're specifically there to watch it and you know kind of what he's about. You're not going to, chances are that is your first time watching it or just stumbling into that for the first time. How serious are you going to take that? It's just my counter thing there. You're kind of dumbing down the F1 fans, which, okay, on a different day I might argue for, but on this particular instance, I'll wear the other hat.
I don't think I'm sort of dumbing down the fans.
No, not you. I meant Red Bull.
No, I know, but more realising the power that the media can have.
This was
I feel like by making such a big deal out of it, they're making even more of an impact with it.
But
whereas if they just ignored it.
the idea of pointing out what the impact the media has is why Max did it. In an interview like the F1 sort of media pen afterwards, being interviewed by F1, he said that it's not necessarily, he didn't name drop Sky personally. They said you Perez, Christian, the whole Red Bull team aren't speaking to Red Bull or doing interviews speaking to Sky or giving interviews.
They're taking it very seriously. They're not even talking to their own team.
Yeah, and Max didn't name drop Sky personally, so either that was him being petty or him saying the problem stems from that he and the team are tired of this sort of constant stolen championship narrative that stems from social media and has transferred into more traditional forms, and he wants to see traditional sort of knows what's going on, knows how to conduct itself properly, media behaving properly and not spouting rhetoric that is pulled from the internet because it gets clicks and views. And I think the argument here stems more from a case of Red Bull and Max expected better of Ted Kravitz than what they saw in him going. Lewis Hamilton's as 7-time world champion. It would have been if it weren't for that stolen championship. And you're sort of going, that's a bit petty. That's the Sun newspaper levels of reporting. You expect better from Ted Kravitz. I think this is where the argument stems.
I think at the same time, just for one thing I'll say on Ted is that if it was anyone except him, I'd be like, but I can't see Ted having a violent bone in his body or meaning that in a bad way. He's probably just Ted being Ted and just saying that and not realizing that. And
exactly, this is the thing. It was either a fair gaffe, which if it had just been the sort of getting Lewis Hamilton's championship numbers wrong, fair gaffe, but then going down the stolen championship.
Yeah, but we know that Ted can kind of ramble on as much as we can. So
he can, and I don't know whether it was a joke that didn't land and potentially it spiraled from there. But that's the thing with Ted. The argument is you expect better. If it was Crofty, give him his due, he's useless. But if it's Ted, you just expect better. And I think this is one of the things that potentially within Formula One, they know which journalists are the better journalists to speak to get an appropriate story. You go to the guys on the checkered flag, you go to Ted Kravitz. You don't necessarily go to Ziggo Sport is a brilliant one for getting a slightly odd story out of places because they ask weird questions and are a bit inappropriate. You sort of shy away from them or wait to be ambushed by them more so than approach them with a pucker story. And I think this is why they were quite upset that Sky have almost sort of climbed down the ladder of appropriateness and sort of moral backbone with this one. So I can see why they've done it, and it's annoying that Sky have done that, especially annoying to see that Ted's done that because I held him in quite high regard. And unless
this is going to suddenly make you a not Ted Kravitz fan.
No, it's just not, kind of, but
smack on the knee, do better, and move on.
Do you think that this was maybe the final straw in that there was a build-up before it? Because there have been other cases, and I remember so vividly with the crash between Verstappen and Hamilton in Monza. And one of the first things that Damon Hill said, and I love Damon Hill, like I've got his winning Jordan picture, yeah. And he said, I think Max did, like something along the lines of, I think Max did that out of spite to make sure that Hamilton didn't get any more points. He did that purposefully. And I was just sat there thinking, I don't think that's what you should be saying. Sky Sports should be better than this.
Yeah,
they shouldn't be feeding this narrative.
Bitter taste in your mouth, something similar to what we had after Japan when you had the likes of Karun Chandhok and Paul di Resta basically slamming Pierre Gasly for sort of passing the crash site at that speed, and you're sort of going, no, you should know better, you should be able to do better, and it's annoying when you can't. And this is the sort of thing that Thiemo and I often joke about when we're sort of discussing things like the FIA cocking up over simple matters, and we go, oh, why don't we join the FIA? That would be jolly funny. But then we sit here as journalists and watch other journalists cock up, and it's almost the other side to the story of when there was that whole pit stop podcast slander, when everyone was going, oh, they're useless, they don't know their facts. Oh, it's annoying that they get all these big promotions and get to go places when everyone else does their homework. But then you look at someone who's in that scenario, a proper journalist, a proper broadcasting team doing something properly, then making a mistake that amateurs don't. And you think, Thiemo.
I will just plug once again, Kim Sky or Formula One, therefore just hire the three of us because clearly we're taking it more seriously than everyone else. So that is my appeal to all of you out there. FIA, hire us. Stewards, hire us. Formula One, Liberty, hire us. Sky Sports, hello, hire us. Channel 4, I'd like to join you, but we don't need to replace you. You're nice people.
Yeah. Thiemo can do regular race commentary. I can do my little notebook. Ellie-May can do the grid walk. Perfect. There you are. You've got your broadcasting group right there.
I like to be rejected by celebrities.
You and Martin Brundle as a team up, that would be interesting.
The sass levels would be through the roof. You get Ellie-May doing a grid walk when she's in a foul mood. That'd be fantastic.
I give it 3 Grand Prix before she's convinced him to wear a toupee.
Or it's just Ellie-May running after people with bucket hats going, that's mine now.
Yeah, it's mine. Yeah. Just cover. If that was her at the weekend, she would have been stealing that woman's handbag.
Oh, that's nice. I'll have that. Sorry, got caught on my microphone cable. It's fine now. When that guy handed Martin Brundle some sunglasses, Ellie-May's going, nope, keeping these. Ellie-May
brand endorsement, isn't it?
It's not a brand endorsement, it's kleptomania.
I would like to just make a provision of I'm not a thief.
We'll allow you to do that. I was allowed to defend myself from apparently being on smack on the last podcast when I predicted Esteban Ocon would come home P2. We've got a few final points somehow still rattling on.
First of all, in that is that in Mercedes and Haas recently, you've had 2 individuals, Anthony Lane, who was a mechanical engineer at Mercedes, and Harvey Cook, who was with Haas. They passed away, and both of their teams were honouring them on their cars and on social media, which may seem a bit odd to mention, but it's just something when it happened with Anthony Lane last week. So I was going to mention it about Harvey Cook because they did that in Austin. I just feel like it's something you see more of these days in F1 because, I mean, I've been watching F1 for a long time now. I'm not saying that they ignore it completely whenever someone who works for their team passes away, but I just, aside from Nicky and a few other like high profile individuals, I don't really remember the last time seeing those kind of tributes done like through a star or a name on the card, this kind of thing. And it's just a more positive part of F1. I feel like that the F1 family is alive and kicking, and no pun intended there, sorry. But it was just worth mentioning that they have this unit together and that they're making, it appears to me at least, more of an effort to do that, to honour them.
It's definitely nice to see, and yeah, you said we saw the Harvey Cook Memorial come out at Haas, and they had sort of almost like a little podium out the front of their garages, and it's touching, and it harks back to this idea of the F1 family, and I think the intensity of the season really impacts and helps conglomerate the teams into these sort of tight little units where they become a family, while they become such a tight knit community, and it's. As much as it's a shame and it's a sad thing to see both these men very young when they've passed away as well. It's quite shocking in that regard, but it's nice to see them be honoured by their friends and people they would likely regard as family in the same way that you would with more traditional means. So it's a nice thing to see. And speaking of other nice things was obviously you get at the end of the race, you have all the pit engineers leaning over the fence, waving on their drivers as they come across the line to take the checkered flag. We saw them do this with Max Verstappen as he comes home, take the win. And then there's a bit of a gap while they're waiting for Lewis Hamilton to come through. And when Lewis comes across the line, the Red Bull mechanics are hanging over the fence, appropriately just applauding.
Smattering of applause.
They're sort of clapping on, being quite sort of, it's not whooping and hollering for him, but it's respectful. And it's, despite the battle that they've had over the years as a championship, as teams, seeing that respect between the two of them it's a really nice thing. And if anything, it's leading by a really good example that a lot of fans could do with taking to heart. And then obviously they go whooping and hollering when Perez comes past because podium is.
I would be intrigued if that had been Lewis in first and Max in second, if they had spattered the applause there, though, because they wouldn't be there as soon, maybe.
Yeah, they wouldn't have necessarily been straight over there, but it just shows they're sort of grown up enough to celebrate their common man. It's just a nice thing, and it's a nice point. Speaking of other things that are quite nice, I'm not sure which one to go with first in this one. I'll go with sexy nice and Ferrari.
Oh, no, not you, Ellie-May. Calm down.
Might have to edit that one out. Sexy nice, and not because they've just dug a hole there. Not the... Ferrari have unveiled their new Le Mans hypercar, and it is a goddamn looker. And you might have seen pictures of it. It is a fine-looking automobile.
It very much is. It's
delivery on it.
It is an Italian stallion.
It looks good. Sounds pretty good as well. They had it out testing around Imola, and oh boy, that is. It's exciting. Looking forward to the new Le Mans Hypercar Class. They'll be facing BMW, possibly. I think BMW have touted they've got something in the works. Peugeot, Toyota, and Glickenhaus have got cars out on tracks at the moment. So
it's going to be an exciting season next year.
I think Cadillac is supposed to be coming over to it as well. There's a few big names returning to proper European endurance racing. So it'll be.
I chose a good year to get into WEC, is what I know.
Oh, I know that I'm going to enjoy getting into WEC next season. I'm just trying to find an interesting way to convince the editor of Classic Car Weekly that we need to report on the Spa 24 hours or something like that. Or Spa 6 hours, Le Mans 24, isn't it? Yeah.
Good luck with that.
They will at one point be a classic car.
Exactly. It's a future classic. And they do also do the classic 24 hours of Le Mans as well. So I'm just saying I'm going along to learn where I need to stand.
You can publish this piece in 20 years when it's relevant.
Exactly. I'll just write it now, and then when it becomes relevant, you can publish it. Speaking of things that we might not have 20 years to deal with, the environment, and Valtteri Bottas, who is setting up a gravel racing series for bicycles, which is a bit of a weird change of tact, but it's something I wanted to mention because it's one of those nice things that we hear about all the drivers setting up legacy campaigns. Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel are two the ones you know about doing this a lot. But Bottas has gone down his very own and very unique personal route for this one. And
is it gravel or is it just a shit ton of coffee beans?
It's gravel.
Okay. Just knowing Bottas, he might try and combine those two loves.
He wouldn't be wasting coffee.
Well, I was also going to ask what gravel is in gravel, because cycling in gravel doesn't sound...
Could be quite entertaining to watch if it is gravel.
Yeah.
Like loose surface gravel, like you go gravel rallying gravel.
So
yeah.
I'm more disappointed now.
As opposed, what other gravel were you thinking of?
Like proper gravel.
I was thinking of the gravel.
Like the stuff you get on a driveway up to a posh house, that kind of gravel.
Yeah,
that's the same type of gravel. How is that?
No, it's not. You've got loose gravel, which is the kind that makes sense, and you've got gravel, which Ellie-May and I clearly know what that is, and I'm more gravel experts than you, Jesse.
But loose. Okay, fine then. It's loose surface cycling. I don't know which sort of gravel it is. I didn't know there was two types of gravel.
Clearly. There's probably more than two types, but there's two distinctly different types, which is gravel and loose gravel.
I assume it's not going to be like the road racing bikes. It's going to be like the more like thick.
No, it's done on road racing bikes. You give them slightly thicker tires. We have all the gears and the drop bars for them. They're really cool bikes. We had one in Go Outdoors when I used to work that I really wanted it because it's such a cool bike, 10-speed, but it's got slightly aggressive like road tires to it. So it copes with the gravel, fixed, no suspension on it. And then Bottas had a video of him doing it on Instagram a few weeks back. But basically he's setting up a cycling race not far from where he was born.
Gravel. That was loose gravel.
Yeah, loose gravel. Loose surface gravel. Loose surface cycling. Stop distracting me with different types of gravel. Anyway, he grew up cycling to school in Finland. He really likes cycling. Obviously, he's dating world-class cyclist Tiffany Cromwell, also a brilliant helmet designer, as it turns out. So he's reveling in the sport, and he sees it as a nice break from Formula One and a good chance to reset. And as we obviously inch into November, Thiemo already jumping in with this one. He likes his cycling as it's a great way to sort of unwind and step back from things. It's a great part of his sort of preserving his mental health. So it's a nice thing to mention in that regard. But also his race, he's basically hosting this race near where he was born in Lahti, Finland, where he is an ambassador to the local area and seeks to preserve the natural surroundings. So he's got this sort of interesting preservation side that we never really knew about. And he's looking to incorporate as many of his passions as possible into the race: nature, cycling, or good coffee. And he said in an interview, after a ride, I'd like to reward myself with a beer or a gin and tonic. So there would be an opportunity for that. And so
I thought he would say
setting yourself up for future advancements there.
He has also mentioned that there might be saunas involved in it as well. Don't worry. He is incorporating as many bits of his personality into this sort of race. So whether or not you meet early, start off with, he says that especially in gravel racing,
is there going to be halfway around the gravel track? Is there going to be a river where you can just get off and cool down for a moment and then get back on and go around to do the rest of it?
Unclear. It's the area he's been cycling around does have lakes and rivers, so I wouldn't be surprised if there is an opportunity for some natural bathing, let's say. But the fact of the matter is,
quickly picturing that in the head by the look of her face.
Dissociating, thinking of, oh yes. Anyway, the fact is he understands that Formula One releases about 256,000 tons of carbon equivalent pollution each racing season, which is quite an interesting statistic. And he wants to enjoy something a little less environmentally damaging. So cycling it is. He admits, though, that professional cycling is at its top tier especially isn't much better because you bear in mind the cavalcade of helicopters, bikes and cars that follow things like the Tour de France or Giro d'Italia around this. You're getting a fair amount of pollution from that. But he's determined to make a difference, and having seen the real-time impacts of climate change in his native Finland, he's looking to leave a lasting and positive mark. I just think it's a nice story. It's a wholesome story.
It's a very nice story. He's going to take over Vettel.
Yes, he's going to become the sort of the quiet elder statesman driving a slightly midfield team, just doing nice environmental things.
Does that mean then that if Vettel has been growing up the long hair as he proceeds to get to the end of his career, we can see
we're going to see long hair Bottas.
I want a mullet from him. Specifically,
I reckon he's going to go for the long beard.
He's going to go for the beard. He's going to go like full Harold Ertl, big beard.
I'd like to see him put that in a race, in a helmet.
What if, conspiracy theory time, he is in fact the main man at Rich Energy, but it's his past self, and he's going to grow into the look, and then time travel back and found Rich Energy just to fuck with everyone.
William's story is Valtteri Bottas' alter ego through time travel and beard growth.
Yeah. Have you ever seen them together?
No.
Yeah?
But they're two vastly different characters. So either Bottas is the world's greatest.
Wouldn't suspect it.
He's the world's greatest character actor? I don't know.
Is this the start of his villain era?
To quote you, yes.
Anyway, look, all I'm saying is I'm down for signing up to go to Finland, eat some porridge with Valtteri Bottas, have a bicycle ride, have a swim in a river, have a nice coffee, and then sit in a sauna with a beer. I don't know. I'm not against that as a concept for a holiday. So if anyone else is down, let me know. We'll book some flights. The final thing I've got on my... You're down for that, Thiemo? All right, we'll go. We'll rent some bikes when we get there. My final point on my big sort of post-race news list is the FIA Motorsport Games. Everyone loves to joke about the idea of what if Formula One was part of the Olympics, or what if there was a motorized Olympics? Well, it actually exists. Turns out it's existed since 2019 with the FIA Motorsport Games. The next one's being held in 2024 in Valencia at not but the standard circuit you'd think of. It's actually being held at Ricardo Tormo, which will be interesting. This year it was held at Marseille and Circuit Paul Ricard, welcoming 463 athletes representing 72 different FIA national sporting authorities. So loads of different countries competing. The Italians won, narrowly beating out the French across the 16 disciplines from karting to rallying, GT racing and drifting over the 4-day event. I also think it's free to go along to. So quite how we missed this and the idea of a free trip to the south of France, beyond me. We're going to have to plan ahead 2024. We're going to Spain to watch some people from Czechoslovakia drifting. I don't know. It sounds like fun. It's a progressive event, really good gender diversity across the field, and the auto slalom cars are electric. So it's...
I will say I'm getting a little bit more into the auto slalom stuff just because I keep finding people who are into that, and I could be up for that.
Slalom is in like slalom skiing?
Slalom.
It's not downhill on snow.
This is slalom.
It's on tarmac and basically just weaving really fast, but you're given, I think they used Opel Corsa E rally cars, so electric rally cars, to basically loads of weaving. They do like time trial stuff, GT racing, drifting, karting, pro and junior careers. So it's really cool stuff. And again, it had drivers from across the world, from different grassroots backgrounds you wouldn't initially anticipate, being put in front of a global stage, a relatively high FIA supported tier. And I think this is one of the things where the FIA's fine money goes into, because it's free to rock up to. So 2024, once Thiemo and I finished our Valtteri Bottas cycle ride, we'll head to Spain and we'll enjoy 4 days of motorsport. How does that sound?
I'm not bloody cycling.
Very different weathers. How are you going to pack?
Cleverly.
I'll just pack for Finland and then just throw stuff off my body as we cycle from Finland.
We're not cycling from Finland. We can get like a train or something.
No, I was going to suggest we do it the Indiana Jones way, where you just have a picture of a map and you have little versions of us, and we
just
get there in like 2 seconds. Then,
yeah. So anyway, 2024, we're going to go to the FIA Motorsport Games. It's like the Olympics, but speeded up a bit. Anyway, has anyone got any final points to throw in there?
I think I'm all right after all of that.
that has been a perfectly fun little bonus episode of not quite race-related news. So that's all we've got time for this bonus little element. Thiemo, where can the people find you?
You can find me over on Is It Fast, where nice IndyCar is better than F1 in 2022 article out.
I saw that earlier today. It looks good.
Thank you. On the Curbs, episode out with Hamda Al-Kubasi. Great gal. She should be an F1 one day. She's just phenomenal. There's a brand new episode of the Nitro RX podcast out with all the fun from LA. It was nuts. And I am also on Paddock, Sorority and Instagram. What about you, Monsieur Billington?
I can be found across much of the internet, Twitter and Instagram mostly, as well as if you want to find me in person, or at least in a physical form in this realm, you can find me writing for Classic Car Weekly, where I have the events pages going out, news pieces, bits writing about our classics, and trying to think what I've got coming ahead. I've got London to Brighton this weekend, so heading down to Madeira Drive to watch some pre-1905 cars arriving after covering the 60-odd miles from Hyde Park to Brighton.
I dare you to race them on foot.
You could probably do that. They are not fast machines. Then the week after that, I am heading up to Birmingham with Richard Hammond to go to the NEC Classic Motor Show. So that'll be good fun. Not specifically with Richard Hammond, but I know he's there and we're going to catch up. So
that's how you're marketed anyway.
Yes, that's how I'm going to tell my friends I'm doing it, when in reality I'm just sort of going to hopefully sort of follow him around a show hall in Birmingham going, could I get an autograph?
Ellie-May, before we get Jesse to go off on more tangents about his love for Richard Hammond, where can people find you?
You can find me looking for a gravel company to sponsor this podcast, seeing as we've spoken too much about gravel.
I didn't know there was two types.
Message.
I didn't know there was two types.
He's going to have a whole education.
Yeah, if you want, the Driveway Gravel Company wants to sponsor us. We can.
I really want to go find one now just for this. I've got some free time later in the week. I think I know what I'm doing.
Anyway, I'm sure Ellie-May, we can find you places other than digging out gravel-based sponsorship.
No.
Just that's it. Purely she's...
yeah.
You're a marketing...
This is her life now.
Yep.
I'm going to go Google gravel.
That absolutely no-brainer of a way to end an extra episode of the Undercut podcast. That is very much all we have time for. As we said previously, keep an eye out for our Mexican Grand Prix review, which you can listen to, as well as Jesse, friend of the podcast, Jacob, and I doing an F3 triple header review that we did record back when it was still more relevant, but we just thought we'd leave it because we need a bit of a gap. So
we recorded that on the Tuesday after Italy, I think.
Yes, we did. But, we wanted to give you something a bit extra as well, so enjoyed that. And in the meantime, goodbye.